T is for thump. Thump. It wasn't loud, but it was definitely happening. The vibrations felt on the wall were a secondary observation, ensuring that this was not an auditory hallucination. Something was hitting the opposite side of this wall. The mind in low-light situations will at times flood the visual cortex with frightening images. This happens most often when the person is getting a natural surge of adrenaline. Combine this with a dab of insomnia and a thump becomes a powerful enemy. Sleepless nights are often brought on by an array of noises, but this was more unnerving, given the proximity and infrequency of these thumps. Walls in modern houses keep out the rain and wind, but offer little protection against whatever this is. It's not uncommon to have a man powerful enough to crush a wall with a mere crowbar. It's nothing, and if it is something, it'll go away. Rational thought doesn't offer the same level of comfort as picking up a gun from the bedside table and putting a .45 caliber round in the chamber. So he sat, holding the pistol in one hand and the other tucked under the pillow for comfort. "No monster's going to kill me without a fight," muttered the man. He knew this was ridiculous, but he didn't give a damn. It was going to be the fastest way to go back to sleep. So he laid down and waited for the thump to disappear. Minutes passed, and as they did, the man felt the adrenaline leave the bloodstream and the heart slow to a trot. Right as the sleepy sting came back to force his eyes shut. Thump. The fear evaporated. Now only anger toiled in his body. I was almost asleep. It was a declaration of war. How dare this thumpity thump keep him from a well-deserved night's rest? Tightening his grip around the pistol, he slung his legs from beneath the warm sheets and found a cold wooden floor to support his rise. There he moved across the room, feeling the last of his drowsiness slip away. He opened the bedroom door and proceeded down the hall. Following the glow of the laundry room light, he peered between the blinds hanging over the back door. His yard was empty. The neighbor's floodlight kept most of the shadows hiding. He turned the handle. Locked. Duh, breathed the man. As he turned to his heel, reached over to a place on the wall where his jumble of keys hung. Laying the gun on the table, he flipped through the keys, looking for the brass-colored one with the 3 upper holes. Finding it, he inserted it, turned it over to hear the familiar clunk. He twisted the handle and started to pull. The man's breath stopped halfway in. The yard wasn't empty anymore. The door stood partially over the threshold, but it was enough to let the cold slither through the uneven doorframe. The man stood still. He wasn't certain that the figure standing in the yard was a thumper, but it was clear that the man had little confidence that this figure was anything except a threat. With surprising agility, the man crouched down, sidestepped to the table's edge, and grasped the gun, jutting the muzzle out with both hands, taking their familiar spots, and the right index finger stretched out tentatively, ready to pull the little steel trigger. Still crouched, the man moved forward, peering through the cracked blinds. Outside, the figure started to move. The night sky seemed to pull the face upward as condensation poured from the nostrils. It was not apparent through the slivers of plastic whether the figure had tight clothes on or was nude. The unnerving thing about it was the color. It was gray, not a deep gray, but a light, almost bluish hue. It was important now that there was a sufficient evidence that this thing was really out there, that he kept it in his line of sight. It was his property, and there would be no creature overwhelming his stronghold any further. This was not a normal event, yet the idea had not been foreign to him. He had imagined all sorts of intruders on other sleepless nights. But how had he not seen this guy just moments before? The yard was empty, and now the thing was shuffling to and fro, mocking the man's preparedness. Muscles tensed. He sucked air into his lungs. Action was the only thing that was going to drive this figure from his residence. "Hey!" bellowed the man as he ripped back the door and let the sights of his pistol find the center mass on the figure. "What are you doing? Huh?" He stepped on the brick path laid beneath the door. The figure, facing away from the man, slowly straightened its back and stood taller than it had before. The air stung. The cold had been less of a shock and more of a subtle wave crashing into the warm-blooded man. Yet it carried something foul. Rotten was the smell that hung in this cold cloud of gas. This was the type of smell that could make a mortician gag. The man coughed as the smell overwhelmed his senses. The stench was strong, but not enough to cause the man to lower the pistol and recoil. The figure was now better described as a gray, hairless man with 6 feet of height, standing in his yard. It began to adjust his head with a crook of its neck. It was clear that the body had ridges running vertically, much like a throat of a blue whale, except more proportionally set to this body. The skin wasn't taut, nor did it sag. It sat rather like a stone. Pop! This was the last thing the pistol-wielding man ever heard. It wasn't followed by the ring of a damaged eardrum like most guns. Hell, he hadn't even fired. Sound had left the yard, and matter of fact, so had the smell. All that was left was sight and touch. Blood ran over his earlobe and down his neck. This was enough to cause the man to blink, and that was all the time the Gray needed to wrap around and take a stride forward. The sudden burst of movement prompted the man. He squeezed down on the carved metal and felt the gun jump as a bullet rocketed out of the barrel and struck the Gray figure. Many of us will hear a thump in the night, but few will ever go and see. Even fewer will ever approach them, and only one man has ever shot one.